So the new Formula One season is edging ever closer, and you can see it all, of course, on the BBC, along with some very familiar faces and voices. And I'm here now. We're just sort of chatting about the new season. One of the big stories about this year are a new team. It's been that kind of winter, though, Martin. If people have taken their eyes off F1 for a second, things have changed, haven't they?
Yeah, but I'm really excited about the new teams. All the teams started somewhere, and it's a much better Formula One and human story following Virgin Racing trying to create a brand new team, a brand new car, a new factory, and go motor racing. It's a crazy challenge, but I really enjoyed. I did a feature with them at the Barcelona test. I spent more time then. I was more motivated by what they're trying to do than years of seeing an underperforming Toyota team not delivering, spending $400 million a year. So I welcome them, and it's good to see that the grid will be diverse. All right, we're going to have to look the other way and politely ignore them for the first few races. But there, Lotus are back too. It's a great story. I'll go with it.
One of the jobs that we need to do, actually, this year, Eddie, is explain to people how much of a mission it is to get a new Formula One team onto the grid, whether it's in 10 months like Virgin or 5 months like Lotus. Just give us some kind of idea of what will have been going on in funny little offices around the UK with people getting ready for this new season, trying to put a team together.
Well, I think the first thing, and the most important thing, in my view anyway, was always the financial aspect. Some teams have different funding. In cases that I know about, and my own case was, it had to be commercially viable. You had to find a sponsorship, and you had to have a very strong and tough team doing that. And some of the teams, that's why Lotus have a good sponsor. Of course, Virgin is involved, Manor or that group of people. If Stefan Racing comes or whatever it is, we're not sure. But I think without a good financial head, and that is my one concern, I agree with Martin insofar as that it's exciting. Yeah. But all this euphoria about new teams coming to Formula One at the start of the season, I'd prefer them not to come if they're going to fail in the middle of the season, because the downside and the opportunity for the begrudgers, so to speak, in terms of the certain media, this or Formula One is falling off the tracks or this, I prefer them not to come if they don't have a realistic viewpoint of how they can see the end of the season in their sights. And if they don't have the funding for that, and they don't think that they have the marketing expertise to be able to attract that kind of commercial input, then don't go, guys. Don't waste your time and don't destroy our sport.
But you never started every season knowing you got enough money to get to the end. You were in desperate trouble keeping Jordan alive, and you did. But I do agree. I think FOM, FIA, FOTA, they should all say, listen, new teams, we'll see you at the Barcelona race 5. Yeah. Go and sort your mess out behind closed doors. Don't embarrass yourself. Two teams that might be in Bahrain have never turned a wheel until they get there. Stefan GP and Hispania, as it's now called, which is silly, really. But
it's dangerous as well, isn't it? That's the point.
But what's the alternative? The alternative is a 16-car grid, or the major teams all running 3 cars, and then it'll just go. Then they'll run 4 cars and be even fewer of them, and that. Then Formula One's on a slippery slope.
Yeah, I totally disagree with saying come for the Barcelona Grand Prix. These teams all put in a bid to the FIA to win the right to be part of the Formula One franchise. And if they have won that right, they should have the business plan in place to be there at the first Grand Prix. They've stopped someone else who might have been, like ProDrive, for instance, I believe, were bidding, who might have been able to do a better job. So, what you used to have was you had to lodge money with the FIA, and I can't remember how much it was, but it was tens of millions, and it was paid back to you during the course of the year. Why has that been taken away? Right, they'll make an embarrassment. If they fail, they embarrass themselves, but more importantly, they embarrass the sport. And I think it's better to have 16 quality cars than 24 cars and bunch of Mickey Mouses at the back.
If you're not in it, you can't win it. But I agree with you to an extent, except these guys put their entry in, and let's not get into the due diligence of the whole thing, because for sure other teams were more viable than the ones that were chosen, some of them. There is no doubt about that, and you have to question that process. But when they joined up, when they signed up to come to Formula One, it was on the basis of a cost capping at 40 million.
Yeah, but it was never signed. It was a
no,
promise.
But that's when they set sail. They set sail with the promise of a cost cap, and then it disappeared between June and September last year. The ground rules completely changed. And
I think it was a bunch of people who saw a cheap entry to the premier motorsport in the world. And if you're going at it with a, oh God, discount, I can get into Formula One, you're just not serious. These teams that they've all had to start somewhere, as you say. But they've started with really solid, and I think what Eddie said, absolutely hits the nail on the head. The business plan has to make sense. Otherwise, what is the point?
I mean, we should praise them because they actually made it. I mean, in the teeth of a recession, to try and launch yourself. And as Martin said, the regulations, the rules kept on changing. So that was never going to help.
But it's like Eddie the Eagle at the Olympics. Say, oh, you've got to praise them for
being
there.
I understand.
This is the
fact
premier. This is the top of motorsport. This is not. No, I think they've done well.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, but it's a miracle they made it. I mean, surely there's an argument to say giving them customer cars or something. So at least they actually could make the grade because, I mean, you talk to people at Virgin as we did, and they feel that
other
like
teams
that the
never
whole
got
time.
a leg up like that in the past. There's enough.
But if you're trying to extend the grid.
Yeah, but you've got to have quality, not quantity. You need quality cars out there. And okay, you say the customer car thing, but where that falls down, everyone will want a Ferrari or a McLaren or a Red Bull, and then your Saubers and teams like that will go out of business because they're just forced down the grid in competitiveness.
But let's not forget that we've also got Cosworth turning up and supplying 10 of these cars, which thank goodness for Cosworth, because if Renault decide they're legging it out of Formula One, or one or two more manufacturers go, where's the engine supply coming from? Where are the teams going to be? They had to stop the flow out of the sport of teams and put something else in their place, even if it's not ideal at this time.
Stacks of questions, lots of confusion. What we do know is we're going to have Virgin and Lotus on the grid for the first race, which is good news for Formula One, particularly with the return of the Lotus name. Let's once again just go along you all. How are these new teams going to do? How far off the pace are they going to be early doors? And what's the most they can hope for?
Well, if you look at testing in Barcelona and the other tests that they managed to make, it's a real battle. I mean, they're well off the pace. I mean, seriously off
Points
the pace.
for either over the course of the season?
If there's a big wet race and a big shunt somewhere, maybe. But otherwise, I think it's all about reliability, finishing the race. And the one other thing, of course, is that not only they've got to get ready for 2010, they've also got to think about 2011 if they possibly can.
It's all about managing expectations in the first year, isn't it? Because you'll have these owners going, oh, lovely, let's get some points and make some money.
Well, Branson knows clearly what's required. He's been there either in the mix, certainly with the Brawn. Mike Gascoigne at Lotus certainly knows. I think Gascoigne has the better chance, even though the car seems to be hideously off the pace. I mean, that's a Formula 3 time, what they're doing at the moment. It's just completely bizarre. I'm surprised that Mike's car is that far. So it won't be that far off the pace when it comes to the race, hopefully. But he's got two very experienced drivers. Yeah. And for that, you have to see that there is a plan. Fernandez is there, AirAsia. It's a proper-looking team, and I see a good future for them. Manor, I think they've got some backing, and they've got some Virgin stuff, so they'll be fine. It's the others I'm slightly more concerned about. Although, if of the 4 or 5 teams that come, and I don't know whether we're including Sauber as a new team or not, I am, because it was the demise of BMW. If you called Brawn a new team, you have to call Sauber a new team, or that's the way I see it. So let's put those. Who's going to be the best of the new teams? Possibly Sauber.
OK. I don't think he's left much for you two to say.
Well, I think we're talking about teams new to Formula One this year or returning after a long period away. If there are 4 who make it to Bahrain, I'd be amazed if 2 of them are still there at the end of the season.
DC?
Well, the FIA have taken the strange decision to change the point scoring, and which I think you lose all the historical data. It's a bit
you mean you lose being the highest British point
I
scorer?
do definitely lose that at some point down the line, but it's a bit like having a lead medal at the Olympics, because they make it nice for those who've turned up. But you get top 10 points. So if these new teams can't finish at least 10th at some point during the year and score a point, just coming back to your question to Jonathan, then they're really in big trouble.
OK, right. More of the all-new ruthless David Coulthard throughout the season on the BBC. And don't forget, it all gets going 13th and 14th very soon in Bahrain. Join us for the 2010 Formula One season.